pleasure to introduce Cheko Asakawa. She's an IBM fellow and she's a distinguished visiting lecturer also at Carnegie Mellon University. And maybe something you don't know about Cheko, when she was 25 years old, she was hired by IBM. She was the first employee that was visually impaired in Japan. And I'm sure you are all familiarized with screen readers. Okay, the first screen reader was developed by IBM, and Cheko, of course, was behind it. And I'm very, very, very pleased to have her here. It's an honor for us, and she's going to introduce the IBM awards for students with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Luz, for your introduction. Now I feel like I'm a very historical person. Okay, so first I'd like to thank for the 2016 program chair to give us this great opportunity to introduce our IBM People with Disabilities Students Award. Thank you very much. And I have been co-chairing this program with Eugene Borodin from Stony Brook University. And unfortunately, he couldn't make it this year because of the last minute visa issue. He really wanted to come, and he is very sorry. So we hope to, he can join next year and to host this session together with me. Okay, so before introducing this year's recipients, let me briefly talk about the background of this program. Okay, so IBM is 105 years old now, and we have been, focusing on the accessibility in the past 100 years. And we have hired its first employee with disability in 1914. It is remarkably early, far before our society began paying attention to these issues. And of course, now we keep focusing on hiring, people with disabilities. But the most important thing is to look for, students with disability who meet our needs. And I think it's not only just IBM. All entity has been looking for the, students with disability whose skill meets our needs. So we started this program last year, and we have a couple of goals, objectives for this program. First, of course, we wanted to give an opportunity to students with disability as early as possible to, attend this kind of conference. And then we wanted to help them, find or think about their future career by attending this kind of conference. And it will help them, not just think about their career, but they will be able to find new technologies that may help their study, their everyday life to actively participate in society. And also, it will help our audience to meet disability students to ensure that they are doing, right research to help real students with disabilities. And then, a company like IBM, university, institute, and any entity who look for, students with disability for their hiring will appreciate to meet, students with disability. So, because we all know diversity ignites innovation. So this year we had, 8 very strong applications, and after the thorough review, we have selected 4 students. 3 out of them are PhD students and 1 undergrad student. And now I'm going to give certificate to each of them, and each recipient will talk about themselves. Okay, let me start. So first, Ashley Queer. Please come up to the stage. So Ashley, congratulations. Thank you so much. So
Okay, hi. Sorry to Eugene. So let me take over his job. So from now, we asked each recipient to introduce their stories. So yourself and what you experienced technologies, and then each participant is preparing 5 minutes talk. So and I really so and after that, after 5 minutes talk, and we will have a question and answer and a discussion session open to floor. So, and let me start from Ashley. Is it okay?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ashley Swickla, and I am from Ayer, Massachusetts, which is about 40 miles out of Boston. And I work at Harvard University as their Assistive Technology Coordinator, and I also work at Northern Arizona University on a remote basis as their Assistive Technology Curriculum Development and Design Specialist. And today I'm going to be presenting a little bit on myself, the technology I use, and the impact it has on my education. Pretty much I'm earning a PhD in education leadership from the University of the Cumberlands in Kentucky on a remote basis, and I am focusing on student development and affairs and how disability plays into that. And I am undertaking a dissertation in looking at how the current accommodation process in post-secondary education impacts students both online and on campus, and how that impacts outcomes and utilizing the social model of accessibility rather than the medical model, i.e. the environment coming to the student instead of the student coming to the environment, and having those types of interactions. So the technologies that I primarily use are the various screen readers out there, JAWS, VoiceOver, Vox, and I do use Braille. And so the issues that I primarily face especially in the online mode, are the lack of math support. So my statistics course I literally had to take orally, because representation of graphs and charts are really, unless they're thoroughly described, are going to be really of little use to me. And also Braille displays representing one line at a time. I actually went to a conference and saw the first multi-line prototype Braille display produced by Bristol Braille, and I was amazed. And it showed how graphs and charts can be displayed, which would have really helped me. But unfortunately that technology is in its infancy, and hopefully something will come of that in the near future. And so especially, like I said, math support, images with screen readers, there are things in the pipeline that are going to increase accessibility, but those are really the primary issues that I faced relative to an online environment. I hope that this changed to the next slide. Nope, previous slide. Sorry about that. Is it on the full slide then? Yep, yep. So the present and future, so I'm a big proponent of universal design and universal design learning. And in my current jobs, incorporating assistive technologies into the accommodation process for students, I really gain a first-hand experience on what they experience and what I experience, and the interplay between accessibility and the online environments. And as blended courses, especially at Harvard, they like to be innovative, and they like to use innovative tools that unfortunately are not accessible. And so, you know, with the advent of accessibility checkers in Word and Adobe, it's really getting the faculty to really gain an understanding of how accessibility plays a vital role in student learning, and trying to really bring about an awareness on campus of the different tools and resources available to the faculty and staff to learn about what's accessible, and you know, what the current tools and programs are in the market in terms of learning management systems. And going to all these conferences, I've just come back from Colorado and California and all over Europe, and you know, bringing this information back and raising awareness about new video players and the integration of HTML5 and the ARIA content guidelines into learning management systems, and how universal design plays a large role in that, and how faculty can incorporate their universal design learning strategies, providing choices for students to take advantage to, like was mentioned before, to acquire the content and replicate their skills learned from the content in a myriad of ways. Whoops, I think something happened here. Is it showing the fifth slide on the screen? Yeah. So the final thing is, I'm a big fan of teamwork. Accessibility is a team collaboration, and having resources from all of these different organizations, and incorporating the principles of universal design and universal designed learning can definitely go a long way in interacting with the environment, and just teaching everyone all around, from content designers, developers, web programmers, faculty, students, staff, just to get everyone on board with the social model of accessibility. And it's my hope with my dissertation research efforts and collaboration that that we can come up with something very collaborative, innovative, and integrate that into learning management systems to educate any and all students who want to take advantage of it. So thank you very much.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cole Gleason, and I am a first-year PhD student from Carnegie Mellon University. I'm very excited to be here at W4A for the first time, and I'd really like to thank IBM for making this happen. So before I moved to Pittsburgh to start school for Carnegie Mellon in the fall, I grew up in Illinois and spent my entire life there, and somewhere around there. And so my two brothers and I all have a congenital visual impairment of damaged retinal cells. So I grew up with deteriorating vision. And when I was young, I learned to use a lot of different assistive technology, from Braille typewriters to large print books, to my favorite, which are these little magnifying things, magnifying telescopes. But luckily, sometime in late grade school, my vision stabilized, and I forgot Braille. You know what they say about languages, you use it or you lose it. And I continued to use small assistive devices like these. I didn't have too much trouble. I still carry the telescope everywhere I go. But then I turned 16 and I really wanted to drive. And when I say I'm from Illinois, I don't mean Chicago with these fancy elevated public transportation systems. I grew up outside of a town of 1,000 people. and it's outside, so there were less people even around there. And so rural areas like this tend not to have any public transit, of course, and so if you wanted to get anywhere, especially to or from school, you really needed to drive. And so fortunately, even with my vision, the state of Illinois actually gave me a driver's license. Unfortunately, I really suck at driving. So I can never see the road signs, and I've never actually passed a car because I was pretty sure I would hit them. And so today, I don't think I've driven in 5 or 6 years now since I got the license, and this is probably a very good thing for you if you are on the roads. But so this kind of bugged me, and so growing up like unable to really drive safely in a place that was designed for transportation, I basically was interested in finding ways to combat that or fix that. And so I was a big sci-fi nerd in high school, still am. And this book I loved, Accelerando, had a character, Manfred, and he had these really cool goggles. There's an illustration on the screen, but they were a like cognitive enhancement for vision and mental abilities. And so I thought, that's pretty cool, and we're getting to a point, it seems like, where technology is pretty far advanced. Can we start making these sorts of things? And so I decided to go to the University of Illinois for a computer science degree, and basically got interested in wearable and augmented reality, and then eventually just mobile computing for accessibility in general. And so I did try to make this at one point. This is a picture of me at a hackathon wearing not one, but 2 Google Glasses, one upside down. It doesn't work, but I thought it looked pretty cool. So now I'm at CMU. I am in the Human-Computer Interaction Institute, and I'm advised by Jeff Bigham and Chris Catani, who's in the Robotics Institute. And so I'm trying to kind of blend a little bit of human-computer interaction and computer vision in order to make assistive technology for people with all sorts of various visual impairments. Right now, I've been working with a team called NavCog at CMU, which is a collaboration between CMU and IBM. And right now, it's kind of like GPS for indoors is the idea. Use your smartphone and some Bluetooth beacons and try and navigate that way. So because it's sort of built like a GPS system, it's very point-to-point. You put in where you want to go. But if you're anything like me, you don't always know where you want to go. And so what I'm interested in now is trying to understand how we can enable different types of behavior, exploratory or recreational behavior, with the navigation system that isn't just a task-based, I need to get to some location. And this is kind of like when I was a kid, I always had to be the person with the map. So like if parents went anywhere, I had to have like the paper map and be able to look at everything. Not because like I was guiding anybody, they weren't going to trust me to like get them to the right place, but just because I wanted to know what was around me and be able to like point out cool things. So I'm sort of interested in how we can do that, but for cognitive assistive technology like NavCog. So really I'm interested in both how can it enable exploration by giving people lots of information without any context as to what they want to do with it, be useful in recreational settings that, you can think of the idea like just like a walk through the park or a walk in the woods. How can you enable something that is good for both indoor and outdoor activities? And how can it foster learning and help people make better mental maps? Because that's always what I wanted to do when I had the map, was really understand what was around me. So how can it be a learning tool that fosters long-term value and things beyond just the use case of the application? So obviously, I assume many of you here work with assistive technology or in the design of assistive technology. So I'd really like to understand from you all what goes into the design process in terms of how do you take your design that might be very need or task driven, and do you do anything to make it flexible or to work with unintended use cases or to really enable behavior that you haven't thought of or unintended use cases in the design process. So I would love to hear from all of you later during a question and answer session, or please drop me an email at cgleason@cs.cmu.edu. I will totally respond in a very timely manner because I'm a professional grad student. So that's all. Thank you.
Lourdes Morales Villaverde. I'm currently working on pursuing a PhD in computer science at the University of California, Santa Cruz. I added 2 pictures of Santa Cruz. It's really beautiful. It was really hard moving there from Puerto Rico. Not really. So my thesis project deals with the design and development of a document formatting tool for blind people to help them independently create well-formatted documents, specifically documents where presentation is important, so like resumes and scientific papers. In general, I like working in research that deals with the development of technology for people with disabilities or making technology accessible to people with disabilities, because having a visual disability, I know firsthand the impact it can have on a person's life. So coming from Puerto Rico, unfortunately, I did not have access until later on to assist technology. Until then, thankfully, I had great teachers who really helped me get through school, at least until 10th grade, that's when my vision got to the point that I became legally blind, also could not drive. They will not legally allow me to drive, so I'm not like, oh, they actually protect the people. So, yeah, and so I can honestly say I would have not continued high school if it weren't for that specific moment when I was actually introduced to assistive technology. I was able to continue with my education. Now I'm in graduate school. So I can honestly say that technology can give us access to opportunities to advance academically, professionally, and even socially. Like I've done internships. I especially traveled by myself, which was very scary at first since I can't read signs. But even last year, last summer, I did an internship in Japan, and I know no Japanese, and I actually managed to travel around Kyoto by myself, just using my iPhone and a well planned out travel plan. I had everything written down, like which bus, everything, and all of that I did using the web. So having all this information accessible made it possible for me to have this beautiful experience, which was a dream come true. I always wanted to go to Japan and Kyoto and see all the temples, and actually was able to do that. Like the people at the hostel I was staying at, I told them all the temples I would go in one day, and they were like, amazed that I could manage it. So even with my visual disability, I was able to do this thanks to technology and the fact that the information that I needed was accessible. And so, like I said, it's the fact that all these opportunities happened did increase my independence and also obviously improve my quality of life. And that's why I want to work on providing the same opportunities to other people with disabilities. And I hope that the fact that you are all here means the same. And now I'm gonna they asked me to briefly talk about some of the issues I face in terms of the accessibility related to this, the theme of this conference, which is web. So I'm gonna talk about briefly my issues with web accessibility on mobile Safari, the default browser on the iPhone. So to those who, so on the iPhone, there are accessibility settings. You can set the text size really big but unfortunately, the browser doesn't actually respect your wishes in that sense. So they just display the web page in the font size they want. It's like tiny. It's just a blur. And so, normally there's pinch and zoom, but some sites actually block it with code. They actually have a code that blocks you from doing that. And then there are also some sites that don't work with Safari Reader. For those of you who don't know, Safari Reader is basically plugin that's in both Safari, mobile Safari and then normal Safari. And it basically extracts the main text in a web page and displays it in an uncluttered page, like there's no ads, and you can actually select the font size. So you don't need magnification. It basically uses the whole screen and you can see whatever you want to read. That's my favorite. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on every website. And the funny thing is, actually, as a web developer, I have issues with it, with the fact that I don't know how to make my web pages reader friendly. So if anyone here knows, please let me know, because that would be great. So in terms of solutions, the iPhone does have the screen magnifier software, which is amazing. I mean, it changed my life, and especially on the iPad, being able to read books and use a smartphone was amazing. But consider a web page and the small screen, like if you have to move the magnifier with 3 fingers. So it's really impractical. I mean, it works, but it's impractical. And the Safari Reader is by far the best solution, but there's also pinch and zoom because you just zoom in and then you can move it around with one finger. And there's actually a little hack to fix this problem. If you want more information, I can show you. It's a simple JavaScript snippet that you can bookmark, and then you click on it on whichever website you are that has that problem, and it'll overwrite the code. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about is how the issues that I just mentioned, they're actually already documented. The solutions are documented online in the document that talks about how the web content accessibility guidelines apply to mobile in the zoom and magnification section. So this is already out there. They talk about the solutions, and like I said, the best one is what Safari Reader does basically, which is allows the user to resize the text without use of magnification. Especially in mobile, you have to consider the screen size. So the other solution will be to hopefully have access to the Safari Reader documentation or even the code, and that would be great too, because that way us as developers can actually make our websites reader friendly. So that would be my hope, and hopefully here someone knows more information about that. I think that's all. I think I did 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Hello everyone, my name is Philbert, and today I'll be talking about ideas for improving math input on the web. And but before I get into that, just a quick introduction. I was born and raised in the San Gabriel Valley, that's down in the States, in California, Southern California. And for my school, I actually received a good amount of services. They had me learn Braille since I was, not necessarily kindergarten, but maybe like first grade or so. I began learning when everybody else was learning how to read and write, print and cursive. And I also had a teacher of the visually impaired who taught us, students who were had special needs, and we actually were given a good amount of tools that we could work with, screen readers, Braille note takers, and talking calculators. I still use a good amount of those things today, except for maybe the talking calculator. Calculators tend to be included in like smartphones and note takers now, so maybe not so much that, but definitely the screen reader and note taker, which I'm actually using right now. But let's see. Are we at my future? Wonderful. So what I'm working on right now is an associate's degree in engineering and technology. I was actually looking at the requirements though, and it's going to require physics, but particularly a lot of math classes if I want to eventually go for that bachelor's degree once I transfer to the institution. So the math classes includes 3 levels of calculus, linear algebra, differential equations. They recommend all that to have you be well prepared. But I realized, especially when I got into college, find a way for me to be able to communicate with the majority of people who can't read Braille, unlike my TVI, teacher of the visually impaired. And I needed to have a way to produce math on the computer accessibly. I mean, now they're doing a lot of things online and that require you to be able to input things like maybe an equation or the answer to a problem, that sort of thing. And I noticed that there's nothing really out there that makes it seamless. So yes, to kind of elaborate on that, currently like the best solution for writing in documents, and that's just this is just documents, mind you, is to use a typesetting language called LaTeX, and with a couple products from Design Science, MathType, and MathML. you can actually produce some professional looking content. But that doesn't really translate very well online, so you couldn't really just employ the same method and end up with the same result. The thing is, that means the blind and visually impaired community who use screen readers are truly dependent on the developers to introduce an accessible online platform that's for math education that's truly accessible. So the thing with that is developers tend to make technologies that are proprietary, and so you learn one system but it doesn't transfer over. The point that I'm getting at is I wanted to try to create a standard, what I thought it was a browser extension that interfaces with existing online educational platforms for learning math. It would work for more than just one online thing you would have to deal with. To elaborate more on this idea, it would provide a seamless mathematical way of inputting content, and so users could dictate mathematical content by speaking their problems, the answers to solutions, that sort of thing. I'm going to try to speed this up. I also thought of a concept called command keys, and that would allow you to hit a key on a keyboard and say the problem that you wanted to produce on screen and let go of the key, and it would, let's say you wanted all that to be in parentheses, you wouldn't have to say open parentheses, close parentheses. It would automatically put in parentheses when you press the key and then when you let go. And then the eventual goal is to better incorporate universal design. So for example, with the command key, maybe someone with physical impairments can't do that, so we want to make sure we find the best solution that would work for them. My last note, I want to encourage all of us, myself included, to tell purchasers of educational institutions, so the people who have been assigned to make these kind of decisions, determine whether the level of accessibility is actually there. So, this could be done through user testing, maybe surveys. I've actually experienced this firsthand at my school, where the college that I go to, they chose a product that the company touted as being accessible, but in reality it was not when you actually use it in real life. So I'll give some credit to my fellow finalist Cole for helping me summarize this in a nutshell, and that's accessible and usable are unfortunately not synonymous, and they're not interchangeable. So I think by doing so, we'd add positive pressure for companies to build accessibility from the ground up and to not just add it as an after fact. And so I just want to say, let us all see that online educational products of choice, whether large or small, reach their full potential when it comes to accessibility. I think that it would make it so that as many people as possible truly are getting what they need in order to be successful. So thank you all for your time. I really thank those who made it possible for all of us to speak. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. So many presentation includes the education aspect. It really fit to the theme this year. So, and unfortunately, because of time constraint, and we don't have time for question and answer. So please don't hesitate to communicate with recipients through this session. So, and one request, I would like to take a picture of all of you. So please stay here.